Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanaya Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about the fourth verse of Arunachala Padigam. There is a continuity of ideas between these verses. In the first verse, Bhagavan was praying to see Arunachala. The word he used in Tamil is kakshi. Kakshi means your sight or your vision. It's more or less equivalent to the Sanskrit word darshanam. But it's not just the physical form of Arunachala, but he's praying to see, because Arunachala has already brought him to his feet. It is the Swarupa of Arunachala, the real form of Arunachala, the Chit Swarupa, as he refers to it in one verse in Arunachala Navamani Malai. So that's Arunachala as it actually is, which is ourself as we actually are. So that's to see that, to have that Swarupa Darshanam, Swarupanubhava, the experience of our real nature. That's what he prays for in the first verse. In order to see Arunachala as it really is, which means to see ourselves as we really are, we need to cease rising as ego. So as Bhagavan says in Uludunaptu, verse 21, I think it is, Unadal Khan, becoming food is seeing. So in order to see him as he actually is, we must be swallowed by him. In order, but he will not swallow us until we are 100% willing to give ourselves entirely to him. So in the second verse, he prays for that love. He refers to himself as Ambali, the one who is completely lacking in love, and he's praying for that love, because only when we have that all-consuming love to know and to be what we actually are, will he finally swallow us. He will never force himself upon us. It's only when we give ourselves wholly to him that he will give himself wholly to us. So the love is what he prays for. When we have such love, we can see him as he actually is only by being destroyed by him. So the third verse is a prayer for Arunachala to destroy us. Well, Bhagavan is praying to destroy him. So the true seeing is when we are swallowed by him. So that is why he prays for his own destruction in the third verse. This fourth verse is not a prayer. This is just he is wondering at the great grace of Arunachala and praising the great grace of Arunachala for having chosen him. But of course, Arunachala chooses those who choose Arunachala. It's when we want nothing but him, but he chooses to give himself to us. So in this fourth verse, it's a praise for having, Arunachala for having taken full possession of him and given himself wholly to him. And then in the next 5 verses, he continues, the next 5 verses, 5 to 9, are all prayers again. And then the last 2 verses are about the greatness of Arunachala, or the grace of Arunachala. So now coming to this 4th verse, I'll first read the verse itself, and then I'll explain its meaning. Uriil varum makali embal udiam yaduni petrai parinil vira erei kartun padattinil ruti veitanaye aryam karune annalayenna ahammiha nana nannidumal varini Arunachala unei varuti Vartida tartu entalaye. My head bows praising you, he ends by saying. So going sentence by sentence. The first sentence is Uriel varum Makalil embal udium yaduni petrai. That literally means, among all the people living in the world, from me, what benefit did you gain? What this implies is, by choosing me from among all the people living in the world, from me, what benefit did you gain? So why did you choose me? What benefit did you get by choosing me? So he's wondering at the great grace of Arunachala. Of course, Arunachala chose him because he chose Arunachala. But here he's expressing it as a praise. What benefit did you get by choosing this worthless fellow? Is the implication. And then the next line, he says, Parinil vira erie kartun padatinil irati veitaneye. That literally means he refers to himself as ere. Ere means a worthless wretch or an ignorant fool. So protecting the worthless wretch so as not to fall into desolation, fixing permanently at your feet you kept. That's the literal meaning. What that implies is protecting this worthless wretch or ignorant fool so that I do not fall into desolation. Desolation here implies the desolation of samsara. Samsara is embodied existence, becoming ensnared in the delusive attractions of this illusory world. So that's what he implies by desolation. Protecting this worthless wretch so that I do not fall into this desolation of samsara. Fixing me is implied there. Fixing me permanently at your feet. Padatinil means at your feet. It can also mean in your state. Veitaneye means you place me or you kept. What that implies is you kept me thus safe in this state of eternal bliss. That is, once you chose me out of all the people living in this world, and you've protected me from falling again into this desolation of samsara. You fix me permanently at your feet. Fixing means very firmly establishing me permanently at your feet. The word permanently is implied in iriti. Iriti means fixing firmly. Veitanaya, you kept me. You kept me in this state of eternal bliss. And then the third line is Ariyam karune annalei enna aham mika miha nanam nanidim al. The al there in this case has no particular meaning. It's a poetic expletive. So this means, Lord who are the ocean of grace. Actually, the way it's expressed is, we have to rearrange the words because Ariyam Karune implies Karune Ari. Ari is the ocean, so the ocean of grace. Ari, so Karune Ariyam Annalei, so Lord who are the ocean of grace. Annal means Lord, and Annalei is a vocative form, so he's addressing Arunachala, the Lord who are the ocean of grace. Enna means when I think, or when thinking, literally it means, but I is implied there. When I think of your, implies of your immense grace, aham miha nanum nanidum. shame overwhelms excessively. No, but aham connects with the inner aham means the aham is the I in when I think. Otherwise, inner by itself would mean when thinking. So it implies when I think, shame overwhelms excessively. So shame overwhelms me. Shame here means nanam can mean shame, it can mean shyness, it can mean awe. That is, when we think of his grace is grace because of because there's nothing we can do to earn grace. Because if we could earn grace in some way, then it wouldn't be grace. Grace is grace because it is without any cause. It is, as sometimes said by poets in Tamil, karanamilada karane, causeless grace. So his grace has no cause. So out of his immense grace for us, he saves us. So when Bhagavan says, Lord, who are the ocean of grace, when I think of your immense grace, shame overwhelms me excessively. That is, what have the implication is, what have I done to deserve such grace? There's nothing I've done to deserve it. It's entirely your immense compassion, your immense love. By your immense love and compassion, you have saved me. And so he concludes the verse in the last line. The last line we can take as two sentences. Varini Arunachala. Arunachala is here evocative. So he's addressing Arunachala. Vari means it's optative. So may you flourish, may you be glorious, may you thrive. It's a way of praising. Like he ended the previous verse saying, wait a second, I'll just get the previous verse. He ends the previous verse saying, Ekana varini duri, may you thrive as one for all eternity. As one means as the only one. So he's using the same vari here. It's a way of may you live, may you thrive, may you flourish. A bit like saying long live in English or something, but it's meant as a praise. There's no exactly English equivalent for vari, but it's a form. It comes from a verb, but means to live or to flourish or to, or to be glorious. Yeah, so in effect, it means glory to you, or glory to you, Arunachala. It's very difficult to put. No English term exactly captures the sense of it, but it's got a bit of that flavor of may you flourish and glory to you. It's a sort of combination of the two. And then he says, Une vartida, Une varuti vartida tartum en talaye. To praise and adore you, my head bows low. That is, what can we say before the grace of Arunachala? There's nothing, all we can do is just praise him with our inadequate words and bow our head down in shame at our unworthiness, in adoration, in humility. All we can do is bowing our head down, and bowing down the head, though it literally means bowing down the head, what bowing the head signifies is the subsidence of ego. So we can truly praise him only by subsiding back into the heart. So this verse is a beautiful praise of Arunachala, the great grace of Arunachala, that is, though we are worthless, though we have no value to ourselves or to him, he has selected us out of all the people in this world, and he's chosen to save us. That is the bhava of this verse. And so it's all entirely by his grace. So in this verse, Bhagavan is emphasizing yet again the central importance of grace. It's only by his grace that even to have an interest in following this spiritual path, even to have any aspiration at all, to have any love at all, it all only comes from his grace. And his grace is not something other than him. He is grace itself. Grace is the infinite love that he is, the infinite love that he has for us as himself, because he sees us as nothing other than himself. He sees nothing as other than himself, so he loves all as himself. And that infinite love that he has for us as himself is what we experience as his infinite grace, his immense grace. So that is what Bhagavan is making clear in this verse. Does anyone have any questions about this particular verse?
Could I ask something?
Yes, certainly.
This is probably not, you know, I don't know how to put this, but it seems to me that Bhagavan is already in that state, and he's speaking to Arunachala and saying, I'm a worthless wretch. And I understand that it's poetry, but I'm just trying to get into, I mean, when I try to not to identify with my ego, I don't think of myself as a worthless wretch.
Yes, but it is ego that is a worthless wretch. That is, when we rise as ego, we take ourselves to be this worthless body. This body, what is this body? It's just it's a temporary appearance. It's a very finite, very trivial, very small thing. If we consider the immensity of time and space, what is this life of ours? But we dance around as if we are something important.
No, that I get, but it just seems to me that maybe it's a poetry, but is it not false humility for Bhagavan to say, you know, I am this worthless wretch, when he must be state of oneness with Arunachala?
Yes, he is one with Arunachala, but he's singing this from the standpoint of an aspirant, and so long as we're an aspirant, we are still that is, though our real nature is Arunachala itself, because we have risen as ego, we take ourselves to be something separate. So as this separate individual, we are a worthless wretch.
So he's speaking for us, not for himself.
Well, Bhagavan, of course, has no doership, so we can't pin him down. He wouldn't say, he would never say he sang this for us. He said these words came spontaneously. They arose from his heart. But we can say it is by that same grace that he is praising here, by that grace, his mind, speech, and body were used as an instrument to give us these beautiful love songs of prayer and praise. So it's all a part of the play of grace. Yes. Ultimately, everything is grace, because without grace, there cannot be salvation without grace, because the very nature of ego is to As Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Ulunaptu, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. So the very nature of ego is to grasp forms. Forms means things other than itself, because ego has no form of its own. So it's the very nature of ego is going outwards, grasping things other than itself. So the love to subside back within, to turn back within and sink back into the heart, that love is not, it's contrary to the very nature of ego. So that love can only come not from ego, but from our real nature, which is infinite grace.
Yes. Yes, well, I think that explains it. It just seemed like, yeah.
It's not forced, it's certainly not forced humility, because when Bhagavan sings that, he sings it with all feeling, because he's going through the emotions that are felt by a spiritual aspirant.
Yes, that's what I didn't kind of get. I didn't get that.
Yeah. Though of course he's gone beyond all these things, still that is that the yearning in the heart of devotees is reflected in the heart of Bhagavan as these beautiful prayers.
I see.
That is what we are incapable of praying ourselves. He prayed for us.
Yes, because it would be difficult for us to think like that.
Yes, yes.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yes.
That is, we all, to a greater or lesser extent, are yearning for that. From the greatest saint to the greatest sinner, all ultimately are seeking happiness. And that the happiness we're seeking is the infinite happiness that is our own real nature. So we're all craving that. But most of us, most of the time, are looking for it in the wrong direction. We're looking for it outside ourselves, because as ego, we seem to be lacking something because we've limited ourselves. So since we're lacking something, it seems to be lacking in ourselves, so we seek it outside. And we think, if I had this, I'll be happy. If I have that, I'll be happy. But of course, we're never happy, whatever we get. However much we desire something, when we get it, it doesn't give us the happiness that we expect. So we desire something else and something else. And dissatisfaction is the very nature of ego. But dissatisfaction is also grace working through us, because if we were satisfied with these petty pleasures of life, we wouldn't make any progress spiritually. But nobody is satisfied. Whatever immense wealth or power or name and fame or learning or whatever or skills, whatever we aspire for, when we gain it, it doesn't satisfy us, because nothing other than infinite happiness will satisfy us. So whether we know it or not, we are all bhaktas. We all love to be happy. But we are called bhaktas if we're seeking it in the right place. We're called worldly people if we're seeking it in the wrong place. But essentially, we're all the same. We're all longing for that happiness. Every movement of our mind, every thought, every feeling, it's all a expression of this craving for happiness. Why is our mind constantly restless, roaming here and there, thinking of this or that? Because we're constantly dissatisfied with our present condition. We experience true satisfaction only in sleep. In sleep, we don't crave anything. We are not restless. We're in a state of full satisfaction. But as soon as we rise as ego, we bring, that is, by rising as ego, we take on dissatisfaction. And Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said a beautiful thing about this. He said the very fact that we're all dissatisfied is itself proof but our real nature is Brahman, because nothing short of Brahman can satisfy us. Brahman means the infinite happiness, the infinite Satchidananda, but we actually are.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
There's a question from Rati. Rati? Yes, yes, Michael. It's this verse is again. I feel it's a wonderful verse of of bhakti, this quintessential bhakti poetry that Bhagavan seems to interject sometimes. A verse of jnana and a verse of bhakti. But the verses as they've been leading up to this, from verse 3 to verse 4, and all of this seems to lead more and more into our compelling us really to subside and give up the desolation
Yes.
of samsara, the desolation of being this worthless individual, trying
Yes.
to cope with all our grief in a sense, because we toil for the most ridiculous and unnecessary things in this world.
Yes, yes,
When
yes.
the only thing we need to really love is Bhagavan and Arunachala Ramana. And the more we come to that, we just will bend our head. We
Yes.
actually are in shock and awe that this is that the grace brings us that awe,
Yes.
that we are so worthless in this magnificence of what
Yeah.
of what Arunachala Ramana is.
Yes, yes.
And that desolation. And again, my question here is when he says bow our head low, would you say that it is, in a sense, efface oneself, annihilate oneself, be
Yes, yes.
swallowed completely
Yes.
by him and by his grace?
Absolutely, absolutely. That bowing of the head, as I say, that is that signifies the subsidence of ego. That's the real meaning uh, of namas. That is nama means to bow, but that bowing is what it signifies is the bowing down of ego, the subsidence of ego.
Yes. And all one
And the
can say,
reason we don't subside is we still haven't really the full impact of the greatness of his grace still hasn't dawned on us. So we continue to rise. When we really understand the infinite greatness of his grace, then there'll be nothing left but to subside. We will not rise again. And we can
yes,
know the full greatness of his grace only by knowing him as he actually is. Because
yes,
grace is his very nature. And we
yes,
can know him as he actually is only by knowing ourselves as we actually are. Because
yes,
he is what we actually are.
yes. And as he says, you see in another verse where you've also mentioned, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end. That beautiful verse that you once mentioned. I don't know which verse that is, but
I don't think it's a verse. I think Bhagavan said that. That's something that Bhagavan said. I can't. He probably said it more than once. The grace in the beginning, the middle, and the end.
yes.
Just
So
like in one of the verses from Gita, but Bhagavan translated, Krishna says, that is chapter 10, verse 20. Aham Atma Gudakesha. I am Atma in the hearts of all living beings. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings.
and finally, all one can say is Vari, that beautiful word Vari in
Yeah,
Tamil.
yeah,
Vari Arunachala
yeah,
Ramana. I
yeah.
mean, you are that. Your glory must completely prevail over
Yeah,
all.
yes.
Must prevail in that sense.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very difficult in English to convey the beauty of and the impact of the words in Tamil. That is, English translation is is just the bare bones of it, without all the flesh. It's only in Tamil that we can really feel those words. They're such heart melting and very powerful words Bhagavan uses.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Okay.
There's another question. Yes, other question is whether by just looking at pictures of Ramana, if this is helpful in practice. It says also because he shows the practice in photos. Namo Ramana.
Yes, that is. Bhagavan appeared, well, we can say Arunachala appeared in the form of Bhagavan to show us this path. So we can't look at his form without remembering what he taught us. That is his. If we just look at his eyes are looking at us, but not looking. They're looking, but not looking. It's very difficult to describe the quality of his eyes, but they have that power to make us turn inwards. That is when we see Bhagavan's eyes. For example, this picture that I have, I have the picture of Arunachala and Bhagavan inset in the side. If we look at the eyes of Bhagavan in that picture, is he looking in? Is he looking within, or is he looking outside? We can't say. All we can say is he's looking without looking. So that the very look in Bhagavan's eyes has that effect of turning us within. Firstly, it reminds us of his teachings, but even if we don't know his teachings, if we just look at his face, look at his eyes, there is some divine quality there that has that effect of turning our mind inwards. And so in a later verse in Arunachala Padigam, in verse 10, Bhagavan explains what happens when we think of Arunachala even once. But thinking of Arunachala and thinking of Bhagavan are one and the same, because Bhagavan is the human form of Arunachala, Arunachala is the hill form of Bhagavan. But these are just their outward form. Their inward form is what is shining in our heart always as that fundamental awareness I am. As he says in one verse, Ariyati Tarajivara Dahavari Jagohail Arivairami Paramatuman Arunachala Ramana. Arunachala Ramana is the Paramatma, but blissfully shines as awareness in the cave of the heart lotus of all different jivas, beginning with Hari. So from the highest God to the most insignificant insect, in the heart of all living beings, all sentient beings, that which is shining as awareness, that is Arunachala Ramana. So it's our own true nature that we see outwardly in the form of Bhagavan. So that form has tremendous power to draw our mind back within, to make our mind, to give up all its outward going activity, to draw it within to face himself as the awareness in our heart, the pure awareness I am, and thereby making us achala, motionless like himself, and then he will feed upon us. That is why he says grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end, because it's grace that draws us to this path. It's grace that attracts us to that attracts us to him, attracts us to his teachings. It's grace that gives us the love to try to put his teachings into practice. It's grace that guides us along the way. And it is grace that will finally swallow us. Accept us as Bali, as he puts it in verse 10 of Arunachala Padigam. Bali means what is offered in sacrifice. So we must make ourselves a sacrificial offering. And by giving ourselves to him, he gives himself to us. Because he is what we always actually are. That's why he says, when I think of your grace, my head bows with shame. I mean, no words, no thoughts can adequately express the greatness of his grace. If there's anything that comes close to the greatness of his grace, it's the greatness of our unworthiness for his grace. But of course, his grace is greater than everything.
Move on to the next question, Michael.
Yes.
So the question is that I've heard from Bhagavan that grace is earned. That's the question.
No. Grace is not earned. If it's something that could be earned, if what is earned is the fruit of an action. If grace were a karma pala, the fruit of an action, it would be finite. But grace is infinite. So how can grace be earned? Of course, in a certain sense, that is, grace is our own real nature, but we can explain what is meant by grace being earned. There are a couple of analogies that were given by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. One is that grace is always showering like the monsoon rain. It's constantly tipping down. Grace is, there's no time or place where grace is not abundantly available. But just as the rain, if it falls on a mound, it runs off the mound. But where it accumulates are in the low-lying places. So if there's anything we can do to earn, in inverted commas, grace, the only thing we can do is to subside. In other words, cease doing, just being. That's the only way to earn that. But in order to subside, it is only by grace that we subside. So the grace is ever available, but we need to yield ourselves to that grace. Or the other analogy that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa gave is the wind is always blowing, but in order for a boat to be benefited by the wind, it has the boatman has to open the sail. So we must open our sail. We must open our heart. We must yearn for that grace, pray for that grace, long for that grace, be ready to receive that grace, be ready to subside. But ultimately, the analogy I like most of all is that analogy he gave of the rain falling on a mound or falling in a pit. Only in the pit will it accumulate. So if we want to do anything to earn grace, not that grace is really something that can be earned, if we want to do anything, it is to subside back within. And subsiding, of course, isn't a doing, it is a cessation of all doing. And how do we subside? By trying our best to turn within, to fix our attention on ourselves. In Guru Vasakavai, there's several verses about grace in which Bhagavan emphasizes that grace is what is always shining in our heart as eye. And in one verse he says, I'm paraphrasing, this isn't exactly, it's put in a much more compact way, but the implication is people complain that God isn't gracious. That is, if we don't get what we want, we say, oh, God is not gracious to me. Or if we have to face some difficulty in life, oh, God is not being gracious to me. Bhagavan says the accusation that God is ungracious is always a false accusation, because God's very nature is grace. He's abundantly graceful. But the grace that is lacking is our grace. That is, he is abundantly gracious to us by shining in our heart as our very own self, as our nearest and dearest. But we are ungracious to him because instead of lovingly attending to him in our heart, we are constantly rushing out seeking happiness in the things of the world. So we are lacking. We are the ones who are ungracious, not he is ungracious. In his own homely way, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa put it beautifully. The grace of three are necessary. We need the grace of God, the grace of Guru, and the grace of Jiva. We need to be willing to offer ourselves completely. So God and Guru, of course, are one and the same. Their grace is ever present. It's our grace that is lacking. As Sadhu Om, a very, very deep idea that Sadhu Om expresses in the path of Sri Ramana is attention itself is grace. Because when we attend to things, if we are preoccupied with a certain thing, so supposing we are preoccupied with politics, the things that are happening in the world, the more we dwell on these things, the more these things loom large in our mind. So whatever we attend to, that thing grows, so to speak, in terms of our experience. It becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So whatever we attend to most, those are the things that seem most important to us. So rather than bestowing our grace on anything other than ourselves, we should bestow our grace on ourselves by attending to ourselves alone. The more we attend to ourselves, the more satisfaction we will find in just subsiding, subsiding, subsiding. The more we attend to things other than ourselves, the more we will be dissatisfied, because nothing other than ourselves can satisfy us. Attention is the power of awareness, Chit Shakti. So that Chit Shakti is what has created all this, and it is also what will destroy all this. When we look outwards, we create all this. When we look inwards, we resolve it all back into its source. When we subside back within, everything else subsides along with us. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uludunaptu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what this ego is giving up everything. Because to the extent to which we investigate ourselves, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we thereby subside. And when we subside, everything else subsides along with us. Because everything else seems to exist only in our view. So when we subside, everything else subsides. So we have this great Chit Shakti, we have to use this by being gracious to our own being, attending to our own being, instead of being gracious to all these illusory phenomena that appear when we look outwards.
The next question is, isn't Bhagavan in this verse acting as our representative in a sense, our inner voice, so to speak? As aspirants, perhaps we need to have our own inner aspiration for union with Arunachala, represented outwardly, so we can acknowledge it more fully. Despite the fact that there is no duality between inner and outer, Bhagavan, in a sense, plays the part on the world stage, like a great actor of a representative in order to more focus our inner aspiration.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, from our perspective, yes, whatever Bhagavan has sung in these songs is for our benefit. And he's helping to channel and to focus our aspiration, to give to give to it's very difficult. We cannot adequately express it in words, because whatever words we try to use are hopelessly inadequate. But it's as if, as you say, Bhagavan is giving expression to our aspiration. And by giving expression to our aspiration in words, he intensifies our aspiration. And when we say there's no duality, yes, there is no duality, but so long as we rise as ego, there is a seeming duality. Because by rising as ego, we seemingly separate ourselves from what we actually are. We seem to be now to be something other than infinite Satchidananda. We seem to be this little body. So there is a seeming duality. And that seeming duality is that's why prayer and I mean, throughout the Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, these 5 hymns, Bhagavan is praying in so many ways, and that is the seeming duality and the underlying non-duality are beautifully blended together. So in these verses, Bhagavan is expressing, is praying as if dualistically, but what he's praying for is the non-dual anubhava, the non-dual experience. And he's also expressing that non-duality even in the form of prayers. That's why he's often switching from prayer to praise, from seeming to take the standpoint of an aspirant to praising from the standpoint of having fully attained it. So, but that is all of Arunachala Stuti Panchakam is a beautiful blending of bhakti and jnana. Bhakti ultimately is non-dual, but to express it in words, we have to express it dualistically. But we should never overlook the underlying non-duality. The Bhagavan we are praying to, the Arunachala we are praying to, is nothing but ourself, our real nature, what we actually are.
The next question is, I read that Sri Ramana Maharshi had great reverence for a sage by the name of Dakshinamurti. Could you please explain why there was such reverence?
Dakshinamurti is the Adi Guru, the original Guru. It is Dakshinamurti is Lord Shiva in the form of a 16-year-old boy. And the Sanakadi rishis, the four brothers, were the Manasika Putra of Brahma. That is, they were the mind-born sons of Brahma. Brahma is the creator. And he created them in order to assist him in his work of creation. But as soon as they were created and were given this task of helping with this creation, they weren't satisfied. They think, what is all this? What is the truth behind all this? Why should we be creating when we don't even know the truth behind all this? So they went in search of true knowledge. And they were wandering in search of a true guru till they grew old. So they were four old men and who had been searching lifelong for the true guru. And eventually they found the true guru. They found a 16-year-old boy sitting under a banyan tree. And they at once recognized that boy, that this is the real guru. And the usual story that is told, they come and sit at his feet, and he remains silent, and they attain by that silence they attain what the true knowledge they are seeking. But once when Bhagavan told this story, he said when they came to Dakshinamurti, they started asking him questions. And for 1 year, he was answering their questions. And for every answer he gave, they would ask a follow-up question, but a very appropriate follow-up question. Not the sort of questions where they're jumping from one topic to another topic, as we see in so many dialogues with Bhagavan, like talks and day by day. People come with a list of questions. And before Bhagavan's even answered the first one, they jump on to the second one. Not like that. These Sanakadi rishis, for every answer given by Dakshinamurti, they asked an appropriate question to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And for 1 year, they were asking questions, and Dakshinamurti was answering their questions. And he was very happy with the questions they were asking because they were very deep and pertinent questions. But after 1 year, he understood that this will go on forever. I mean, the truth cannot be revealed through words. So long as he continues answering their questions, they'll continue raising more questions. So Bhagavan describes it as that spring of Vatsalya that was rising in his heart. Vatsalya means the love that a parent has for a child. So though Dakshinamurti is a 16-year-old boy and they're old men, he had that parental love for them. So he closed that valve on that in his heart, where that parental love, that Vatsalya was springing forth. He closed that and merged into silence. As soon as he merged into silence, they also merged into silence. And that silence is the silence of pure being. So thereby they came to know what they were seeking to know, the ultimate reality, which of course is our own being. When Bhagavan told this story like this, Murugan was wonderstruck to hear this, and he said, but to Bhagavan, in no book is it written like this, but they asked questions and he answered. And Bhagavan said, no, it's not written in any books, but this is what happened. How can Bhagavan say this is what happened? Because he's Dakshinamurti himself, so he alone can know what happened. Well, he and the four Sanakadi rishis. So Dakshinamurti is Shiva himself, appearing in the form of Guru. Bhagavan, likewise, he is Arunachala Shiva himself, appearing in human form. So Bhagavan and Dakshinamurti are actually one and the same. It is Dakshinamurti who came in the form of Bhagavan to give us the quintessence of all bhakti and jnana, the ultimate teachings for the ultimate path.
So the next one is, Michael, you recently talked about Akshaya Patra. This appears in the Mahabharata. I would love to hear from you the story of Akshaya Patra and what is the inner significance of the story. As you often say, these stories in our Puranas have inner significance. Thank you.
I can't remember the exact story behind it, but the Akshaya Patra is a vessel, but a cooking vessel that is always full. However much you serve from it, it's always full. I think that is a beautiful analogy for grace. However much grace is given, grace is always full. There is never any shortage of grace. So I think my understanding is that is what the Akshaya Patra signifies. It's the abundance of grace. And grace, just like the Akshaya Patra is always giving, but however much it gives, it's always got more to give. Grace is ever abundant, ever giving.
Makes sense. Makes sense, sir. Thank you.
Okay. But I'm sure if you Google it, you'll be able to find the story.
No, I found the story, but
Yeah.
but I wanted to hear from you because
Okay. I'm not very good at remembering all the details of stories, but
no, but the significance is very good. What you said
yes,
makes a lot of sense.
yes,
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
right. It's like Kamadhenu. Kamadhenu is the Kalpakataru, the wish fulfilling tree. They're all analogies for grace, metaphors for grace.
Yeah. Perpetually they are giving us. Yes.
Yeah.
They're supporting us, guiding us, protecting us perpetually, minute to minute.
And all that is required on our part is that we have to give ourselves, and then grace will give us everything. But we must be willing to give ourselves. That is where we are falling short.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Ms. Smita, would you like to ask the question or would you like me to ask it?
Thank you so much, Michael. It was so good to hear. I mean, it brought me tears as well. But the thing is, like, being young and amongst this, how to refrain from the activity that demands the family, taking care of kids. How to, there are moments of grace temporarily, but it's not continuous. When you say the grace is continuous, how to be available to it all the time? I mean, it seems when hearing so simple, but when it comes to practice, it's just a sine wave going up and down all the time. But
activity is never an obstacle to this. The obstacle is not the activity, but the doership. The doership, that is, the activity is done by the three instruments of action, mind, speech, and body. Let them act. The problem is that we identify with them and we think, I am thinking, I am saying, I am doing. So the doership is the problem. If we understand, as Bhagavan says in the 13th paragraph of Nana, but that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas. Driving or carriers in this context means everything that is to happen, everything that ought to happen is being made to happen. Everything that we are to do, everything that we ought to do, we are being made to do. We mean these three instruments of action, these mind, speech, and body. So leave action to him. Let him take care of the action. We need to inwardly surrender ourselves to him by trying to turn with him more and more and more. This may not be very clear to us at first, but the deeper we go in the practice of self-attentiveness and self-surrender, which are one and the same, of course, the clearer it will become to us that everything is happening by his grace. And all we have to do is to yield ourselves to it by turning within more and more and more. That is, Bhagavan has made it clear, whatever is to happen is going to happen. Whatever is not to happen will not happen. He says in the note he wrote for his mother, Endrum naduvadadu, envichikanum naduvadu. That means what will never happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. So we can want things to happen and we can try to make them happen, but if they're not destined to happen, they are not going to happen. Nadepadu entare seinum niladu. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstacle. So we can try to prevent things happening, but if they're destined to happen, they're going to happen in spite of any amount of obstacle. Iduve tinnam, this is certain. Ahalin monamayirake nandru. Therefore, being silent is good.
Then how can
what does he mean by being silent? It doesn't mean sitting like a stone doing nothing. Being silent means not rising as ego. Yes, you were just asking something?
No, about the karma, right? I mean, if it's everything is driven, what is that? I mean, apart from holding to the self as long as we can. I mean, every moment it may not be possible, but I think eventually we'll get there, is what I understood.
Yes, absolutely. But
Thank you so much.
Though everything happens as it's meant to happen, that doesn't mean that all our actions are what are meant to happen, because there are two, that is, whatever we need to do in order for our prarabdha to unfold, we will be made to do. As Bhagavan says in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother, Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangirindu artavipan. That means in accordance with the prarabdha of each one, Adakanava means he who is for that. That's referring to God or Guru, the ordainer of the fruits of karma. Angangirandu means being there, being in every place, implying being in the heart of each one of us. Artavipan will make us act. So we will be made, our mind, speech, and body will be made to act in accordance with destiny. But so our mind, speech, and body act according to his will, but they also act according to our will. We want this, we want that. If we had no freedom of will and action, it would be unnecessary for Bhagavan to say in the next two sentences. In the next sentence, he says, "Envichikanam." In spite of what is not to happen will not happen, in spite of any amount of trying, any amount of effort. Why do we try? Why do we make effort for what is not destined to happen? Because of our will. So we have freedom of will and action, he implies. And in the next sentence, he says, in spite of any amount of obstacle. That again implies that we have freedom of will and action. But so we have this freedom of will and action. We don't have freedom to change anything, but we have freedom to want to change it. We have freedom to try to change it. But we don't have freedom to change what is going to happen is going to happen. What is not going to happen is not going to happen, in spite of any amount of effort we make. So we have the freedom of will and the freedom of action, but we don't have the freedom to experience whatever we want to experience. What we will experience is what is destined to be experienced. So we have this freedom of will and action. How should we use this freedom of will and action? Rather than using it to try and achieve anything outwardly, which is futile, we should use that freedom of will and action to try to know, who am I, by turning our attention within. So it's that freedom of will, if we use it correctly, that is what is called bhakti. The freedom of action, if we use it correctly, that is what is called self-attentiveness or surrender, subsidence.
But how do we know that we are on the right path or sliding down?
We have come to Bhagavan. We are on the right path. We are maybe not following the path very well because of our lack of bhakti, but he is there to guide us. We should try our best according to the best of our understanding. We should try to follow the path he has shown us. He will guide us. He will lead us unfailingly to the goal. Of course, trying to understand his teaching correctly and apply it correctly, we have to do that. But behind all that, it's his guidance is there. His grace is ever guiding us. So we should have confidence in his grace.
Thank you so much.
That is what is called Shraddha. It's often translated as faith, but it means that confidence, that trust in his grace. Because ultimately, whatever effort we make in this path is the working of his grace. So we are wholly dependent on his grace. We cannot achieve anything without his grace. So we should have that, we should have very firm confidence in his grace. I may be worthless. I may not be surrendering myself properly. I may not be investigating myself properly, but I rely upon him entirely. Let him take care of me. I must try my best, but even if I'm failing hopelessly, I trust his grace. That should be our attitude.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. And Sadhu Om often used to say, it's not important to succeed in this path. What all Bhagavan has asked us to do is to try. As Krishna says in Gita, you have the right to the action, not to the fruit thereof. That is, the fruit is in God's hands. God decides what fruit for what action. So if we apply that here, of course, self-investigation and self-surrender are not karmas, but it equally applies here. We have to try our best to surrender ourselves, to attend to ourselves. Leave that is, whether we succeed or fail, that doesn't matter, because if you trust him, he is not going to let us down. We may fail any number of times, but grace will never fail. So we need to have that very strong confidence in his grace. The more confidence we have in his grace, the more we will subside back within. So applying his teachings correctly, truly surrendering ourselves, truly investigating ourselves, is to the extent to which we have confidence in his grace. And to the extent to which we surrender ourselves and investigate ourselves, that confidence will grow unfailingly.
Michael, a quick question.
Yes.
When you say that that whatever is to be experienced will be experienced, so while a certain event may be experienced, as one's own, sort of as one's attention turns inward, the way in which things are experienced does shift.
Oh, of course, of course.
And so,
That,
you know, I mean, even something
yeah.
which is quite painful can in fact be the opposite.
To be more precise, whatever we are given to experience is predetermined. But how we experience it, that is in our hands. That is, we all face difficulties in life. We all face calamities, bereavement, all these things. If we are constantly trying to resist these things, trying to avoid these things, or getting angry with God when things don't go our way, saying, oh, God is ungracious or whatever, we make it more difficult for us by ourselves by doing that. But if we accept it, whatever happens, it is His will. He knows what is best. We experience, we undergo the same experience, but with equanimity. That's why prarabdha is the fruit of karma. That is what we are given to experience. But we have tremendous freedom with regard to how we experience it. We can either joyfully accept it as His prasadam. Whatever difficulties are given, it's His Aro prasadam, the prasadam of His grace, the gift of His grace. If we have that attitude, even the greatest difficulties in life will not touch us.
The next question is there a name for the scientific principle that explains why change or motion can only be observed against something unchanging? For example, a TV screen must remain stable to display moving images, or a mirror must be still to reflect movement clearly.
Well, I'm not very conversant with science. There may be some name for it. I don't know what the name is, but applying this to Bhagavan's teachings, yes, there is an unchanging background. That is it's not some unknown background that we're not able to see. We all experience our own being. The one thing that never changes is our being. That is that our being, I am, and that is the being of our being and the shining of our being. Shining means we're always aware of our being. That remains unchanging. That is whatever we may be doing, whatever we may be experiencing. The background is I am. Without being, we cannot do anything, we cannot experience anything. So being is the unchanging background for all changes. That is, whatever changes is an object of experience. So, but the awareness that enables that to be known is ever unchanging. That is our being. That is I am. So whether this principle has a name or not, I don't know, but that need not concern us. Well, we need to understand that there is one thing that is ever unchanging. And that one thing is not something far away. It's our very own being. The one thing that we always experience. The only thing we experience constantly, continuously, and without a break. Now in the waking state, we're aware I am. In dream, we're aware I am. In sleep, we're aware I am. Everything else we're aware of is constantly changing. But this fundamental awareness I am, which is our very being, that remains ever unchanging. So that is what we should hold on to. An analogy that is sometimes given is for that is the axle in a wheel. That is, in old days, the bullock carts in India, there's the central axle, and the wheel is slotted over the axle, and some grease or something is put inside to make it smooth. But the axle remains ever unmoving, and the wheel goes round and round. And that's one. So that unmoving axle is one analogy that is given. Another analogy is children playing around a pole. A pole is fixed firmly in the ground, and the children hold on to the pole and swing round and round it. So that fixed center, the center of the wheel, the axle, or the fixed pole, that is the heart. That is our being. So that is what is ever unmoving. So we have a choice of either spinning on the wheel or holding on to the axle. To the extent to which we hold on to the axle, the heart, our being, we are unmoved by all the changing. But if we, instead of holding on to the axle, if we hold on to the things that are changing, then we get carried away by all these things. All mental activity is constantly changing, but in the center is I am. That is what we should hold on to. That is why the one true refuge is only our own being. It is said God is our refuge. So long as we don't understand that God is our own being, it's good to take refuge in God. But when our devotion to God, our bhakti grows, along with the growing of the devotion, there'll be a growing clarity. And then we will come to understand God cannot be something other than ourselves. He is our own reality. He is our own heart. He is the center. He is our very being. And then we understand that the real refuge is not just in the outward name and form of God, but that name and form of God appears in waking and dream, it disappears in sleep. So even that name and form of God is not permanent. The true form of God, the Swarupa of God, is permanent, because it is that I am that is ever shining in our heart as our own being. So I didn't answer the question because I don't know what the scientific principle is, but I hope the answer I gave is useful and relevant to whatever was behind the question.
The next question is, during this time of wartime between countries, what should be my thinking process? Should I justify one side based on news or facts and be ready to render every possible service to the nation? Or to remain introverted, saying to myself that none of this is really happening, or even if it's happening, it's all bound to be, and I have no role to play? Thank you.
It depends on the circumstances in which we find ourselves. This was the dilemma that Arjuna had at the beginning of the Mahabharata war. He suddenly realized the enormity of what was about to happen. That there on the other side were his beloved grandfather, his guru, and his cousins, his relatives, and how can I enter into this war and kill it, and kill these people who are so dear to me, who have done so much for me, who've raised me as a child and everything. But Krishna makes him understand that those who are to die are already killed by me. That is, and death is only for the body. It's not for us. So in certain circumstances, we may be in a position where circumstances compel us to take part in a conflict. Sometimes, for example, if we happen to be a young man and our country is under attack, and they may sometimes be justified. Sometimes, as far as possible, war should be avoided. War should always be a last resort. But sometimes there are circumstances where war becomes inevitable. Because if you don't, for example, in the Second World War, if nobody had fought against the evil of Nazism, the Nazis would have overtaken all the countries, and so many people would have been persecuted just because of their race or because of their disabilities or whatever. And it was an evil, clearly Nazism was a very evil ideology, and it was clearly doing very great harm. It was so. If sometimes wars are, there is such a thing as a righteous war, because sometimes you have to. But most of us, well, most people of at least of my generation, and I hope of future generations, have been blessed to avoid circumstances where we were drawn into any war. But we can never be sure. The world's ever unstable. So it all depends upon the circumstances. There's no one right answer. I mean, in our life, we get drawn into so many different types of actions. There's no, what is the right action? Often it's very difficult to know what is the right action. That is one very good guiding moral principle is ahimsa, to try to avoid doing harm. But sometimes keeping quiet without doing anything can be causing more harm than intervening and taking some action. So there's no simple answer, but we will be guided by grace to do whatever is the appropriate thing to do according to the circumstances. And two of the greatest works on the subject of dharma, of what should be done and what shouldn't be done, two of the greatest works are the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And in both these texts, particularly the Mahabharata, it shows how complex things are. But there's no one answer to what is right. It depends upon the circumstances. It depends upon so many things. And that is the complexity of dharma is shown so effectively in the Mahabharata. For example, Bhishma, he made a great sacrifice. So that his father could marry the girl he loved, he took a vow never to marry. And also not to become a king. But that vow of his caught him up in such a situation. In the end, he was fighting on the wrong side in the war, the side that he knew was unjust, but because of the vow he had taken to always support the kingdom, he had to fight on that side. So life is there's no simple right and wrong. I mean, because he had taken that vow, he was bound by that vow. But that caused so many problems. So there's no simple answer to what is right and what is wrong. As far as, but Bhagavan has given us certain guiding principles. One thing Bhagavan taught us in the 19th paragraph of Jnana, firstly, he taught us it's not appropriate to dislike others. But they're not good people, good minds and bad mind. Mind is one. The vasanas are of two kinds, subha and asubha, agreeable and disagreeable. So when the mind is under the sway of disagreeable vasanas, we call it a bad mind. When it's under the sway of agreeable vasanas, subha vasanas, we call it a good mind. So we shouldn't dislike people, however bad they may seem to be, we shouldn't dislike them. Likes and dislikes are both to be disliked, Bhagavan says. And he also says, as far as possible, we should avoid letting the mind dwell excessively on worldly matters. So many things are happening in the world because nowadays we've got all these modern systems of communication on the internet. We can spend all day long reading the news, watching the news, and so on. But what can we do? It pains our heart to know about the wars that are happening in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Sudan, in so many places in the world. Wars and conflicts are happening. So many injustices are happening in so many countries. There are tyrannical rulers who are who are who are denying people their rights and causing so much suffering. All these things. But what can we do about these things? We can do nothing to prevent these things. So the best thing is to accept whatever is, as Bhagavan said, he who created this world knows how to look after it. That is, there is some divine power that is taking care of everything. Leave it to that power. We need to turn within and subside within. So that we should do as much as possible, but circumstances may arise where we get caught up in a conflict, and then how we should respond, we just have to pray for guidance at that time to respond in the appropriate way, because it's very, very difficult to know what is the right way to respond to certain situations. There are pros and cons to acting, and there are pros and cons to not acting.
The next question is, once coming out of a deep sleep, my mind still very quiet, I felt this pull. I didn't have any thoughts at the time, except one thought that came to me and said, okay, show me who you are. I felt a whirlpool of energy in the middle of my chest. Then the awareness of my body, mind, time, and space ceased. I was overwhelmed by love and peace. I later realized there was no one there to feel the love and peace, but in fact, I was that ocean of love and peace. Before that moment, I had no contact with spirituality, and that was the start of my journey. In my view, that was grace. I find that sometimes I'm able to get closer to surrendering more than other times when my ego seems to quickly step in and start to ridiculously negotiate terms of surrendering. Does knowing of grace come in stages, or is it all of a sudden and complete? Thank you.
No, I think grace reveals itself slowly to us. Sometimes, like the experience you had, that is obviously, that experience was given by grace to make you start to look for things a bit deeper. So sometimes grace gives us certain promptings like that. But truly understanding grace or recognizing grace, it's something that as we go deeper and deeper in this path, the reality of grace and the role of grace and the fact of grace will become clearer and clearer to us. And the clearer it becomes to us, the more confidence we have in it, and the more we will thereby subside, the more we will trust that grace and be willing to leave everything in the hands of that grace, to yield ourselves to that grace. Grace, of course, is ever unchanging, but our ability to recognize the grace will slowly grow, slowly matures as we follow this path. And for those who haven't had any such experience like this person described, don't be disheartened. How grace works is different in the case of each of us. In some of our cases, nothing dramatic happens, but just somehow it just grows upon us. We just come to see it more and more clearly.
The next question is, when we are out and about in the world or in our routine, is it helpful to ask in prayer to remember grace and not be hypnotized by sensory perceptions?
Certainly, certainly. That is the thing about prayer. We should know what to pray for. And praying, the prayer that has just been said, that is exactly the sort of thing we should be praying for. That is, we shouldn't be praying for this or that. We should be praying only for what Bhagavan wants to give us.
Something special.
That is, in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, Bhagavan has shown us the type of things we should pray for. We should pray for love. We should pray for the willingness to surrender ourselves. These are the type of things we should pray for. So long as we're not praying for worldly things, as long as we're just praying for things that will be that are conducive to the subsidence of ego. I mean, our ultimate aim is to bring about the complete subsidence of ego. So praying for anything that is conducive for that is appropriate. And prayer isn't just the words we say. Prayer is the longing in our heart. But sometimes like Bhagavan has expressed these prayers in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, he's expressed so many prayers in words. These, but by reading these prayers, thinking about them, reciting them, for those who know it in Tamil, and meditating upon them, they help us to understand what it is we should be aspiring for, what it is we should be longing for. And the real prayer is not just the words, it's the longing in our heart. We can repeat words, we can repeat prayers mechanically, but that isn't real praying. Real praying is the longing that accompanies the words. And sometimes we can pray wordlessly. We can just long for the grace of God, of Guru. There's one verse in Aksharamlai. Giriyuruvahie kirupe kadale, kripe kondaruluvai Arunachala. Giriyuruvahie kirupe kadale means ocean of grace that has become the form of a hill. Kripe kondu, kripe is grace. Kondu means very intensely, arulvai, graciously bestow grace intensely. So Bhagavan isn't asking for anything there except grace. So that's like giving a blank check to Bhagavan. Here's the blank check, you write on it whatever you want. So he knows how to bestow his grace. So why should we ask for this or that? If we pray for grace, that's the best prayer of all, because we're not asking for anything specific. We're asking only for his grace, and he will then bestow his grace in whatever way he wants. There's one of Sadhu Om's songs, Epidio Arulvai, Adenana that is, bestow grace in any way you wish. Who am I to understand that? Who am I to know what is the way you should bestow your grace? You know better than I do what is good for me. Oh yes, epidio aruvai adi evidum nan arivain. How can I know that? How can I know how you should bestow your grace? You bestow in any way you like. So ultimately, we should just be praying for his grace, knowing that whatever his grace gives us is what is best for us. This again comes back to this thing of confidence, of trust. We need not ask for this or that. All we need to ask for is grace, knowing that grace knows better than we know what we need.
Is there a way of reconciling the idea of Arunachala as the appearance of God in a physical form with the geological explanation of it according to science? Many people will see Arunachala as a beautiful hill formed over millions of years as a geological structure, and that any spiritual significance of it is just simply imaginary, based on traditions and beliefs. Is there any explanation that might help challenge that view? Or do we just need to accept the wonderful spiritual significance of Arunachala as a mystery with no explanation?
It's all a matter of perspective. For a geologist, Arunachala just a rock, a mountain. It formed geologically over thousands of years and everything. For a spiritual aspirant, well, as Bhagavan says, it's the ocean of grace that has taken the form of a hill, that has become the form of a hill. So it's all a matter of perspective. If we see Arunachala as the ocean of grace, then what is the geological explanation about it is irrelevant. We take the form of Bhagavan. We adore the form of Bhagavan as a divine manifestation. But according to biology and medical science, it's just a body like any other body. It consists of cells and blood cells and bones and flesh and everything. So we can see things just from a physical perspective, but we know that a body, it only consists of flesh and bones and so on. But we see so many bodies about us, but we don't see people as just bodies. We see them as people. We see that there's more to that. Though what we see is the outward form, the physical form, we see that there's more in that physical form than just the physical form. We see a person in there, someone with feelings, emotions, likes, dislikes, and all these things. So every body, every living body is more than just a body. It's more than just a physical thing. And this applies not only to people, to animals. We can see animals have their own personality, their own likes, dislikes, and so on. So when we already see physical things as more than just physical things, why shouldn't we see Arunachala also as something more than just a physical thing? It has a physical form, but what is like Bhagavan sees that physical form as an ocean of grace. So it's all a matter of the perspective. If we see from a very stula perspective, a very gross outward physical perspective, yes, it's just a hill of insentient rock. So it seems to us. But if we are inwardly attuned to it, Arunachala is so much more than just a hill. It is ultimately, I mean, Bhagavan is described in so many ways. He describes it as an ocean of grace. He describes it as the very nature of consciousness, Chit Swarupa, Chinmaya. He uses these words. So it all depends on how we are blessed to see it. If we are blessed to see it as something, though outwardly having the appearance of a hill, being actually much more than a hill, if we are blessed to see that, then the geological explanation won't concern us. And from a deeper perspective, what is all this geological perspective? If we see a mountain in a dream, if we're interested in geology, we may look at the mountain and think, oh, this seems to be formed of lava from an ancient volcano, must have happened millions of years ago and everything. That's our scientific explanation we'll give it. But when we wake up from a dream, all our scientific explanation is rendered null and void because we recognize it was all just a mental fabrication. So likewise, according to Bhagavan, this whole waking state is nothing but a mental fabrication. So what we need to, in this spiritual path, we are not concerned with physical things. We're not concerned with physical things as physical things. We're looking for the reality that lies behind those the physical forms. And that reality cannot be anything other than our own reality. So we can find the reality of all things only by finding the reality of ourselves. But for that, we have the special form of Bhagavan, who's come to give us this teaching, and the special form of Arunachala that is eternally teaching the same teachings, but in silence instead of in words. Because we are too, our minds are too outward going to recognize and understand the constant silent teaching of Arunachala. Arunachala himself appeared in the form of Bhagavan to give us the same teaching in words. What Arunachala taught Bhagavan, he himself expressed it in Akshaya. He says, Tirumbiya hamdane dinamaha kankan teriyum endranayen Arunachala. That is, turning within, see yourself daily with the inner eye, it will be known. Thus you said to me, Arunachala. So how did Arunachala say that to Bhagavan? Obviously not in words, but in silence. So what Arunachala is eternally teaching in silence, Bhagavan has come to, Arunachala has come in the form of Bhagavan to translate his silent teaching into a language that our gross mind, outward going minds can understand by giving us the same teaching in words. And if we follow the teaching that is given to us in words, we will come back to the silence, which is our real nature, the real nature of Bhagavan, the real nature of Arunachala. That is the infinite silence of pure being.
Michael, that's all the questions for today.
Okay.
Michael, I have a question.
Yeah, yes, please ask.
Namaskaram, Michael.
Namaskaram.
Michael, I was looking into the, I just got reminded from what another person was sharing his experience, that he had an experience upon waking from the sleep. At the same time, I also read from the talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi in this, once the jnana is revealed, it takes time to get steady itself.
Some of these recordings we have to question, because what is jnana? The dawning of jnana is nothing but the destruction of ego. It is eternally stable. Instability, unsteadiness is a phenomena that appears only in the view of ego. So when ego is destroyed, what remains to be stabilized? What remains is only the eternally stable reality. As he says, for example, in verse 28 of Uludunaptu, when one knows what the real nature of oneself is, then anadi, ananta, akanda, satchidananda. Anadi means it's beginningless, because it's beyond time. Ananta means endless, limitless, infinite. And akhanda means it's unbroken, it's undivided. So it's one single undivided whole. So the thing is, people recorded what Bhagavan said without always fully understanding what he was saying or the context in which he was saying it. So we don't really know what Bhagavan said, but it's in the view, if we need to understand the core principles of Bhagavan's teachings. If we understand the core principles of Bhagavan's teaching, the idea that anything remains to be stabilized after ego is annihilated is absurd. And so I think Bhagavan may have been talking not about jnana as such, but about when we come to this spiritual path, we need to stabilize in this path. We need to follow this path. That is, whatever experiences we may get on the way, experiences come and go. We need to be stable in following this path.
Mm-hmm. They have quoted it from Kaivalya Navanitam book.
Okay, but again, it's a matter of interpretation, and sometimes in text things are said in a rather metaphorical way. What we need to understand the core principles of Bhagavan's teachings. If we read works like Ulladu Nana, Upadeshundia, Atma-vichara, Arunachala Panchakam, and allow those ideas to sink deep into our mind and think deeply about them to understand them, then I mean, I don't know exactly what is said in Kaivalya Navanitam, and there may be different ways of interpreting that. So why should we concern ourselves with these ideas when Bhagavan has given it things very clearly, simply, in a very unambiguous way in his own original writings?
So when there was an experience and there was no experiencer at that time, as the person has shared with us,
that is not
again the ego appeared.
No, but even that description is not entirely correct. That may be the impression, the person who asked the question, that may be the impression he had, but there cannot be an experience without an experiencer. Anything where we come back and report something that we have experienced, we were there as the experiencer of that thing. So none of whatever we may experience before the annihilation of ego cannot in any way be related to what remains after ego is annihilated, because after ego is annihilated, what remains is that which is beyond the triputi of experiencer, experienced thing, and the means of experiencing it. So, but so long as there's any visesha anubhava, any experience about which anything can be said, any experience that is in any way distinguishable from any other experience, then there is an experiencer of that, and that experiencer is ego.
Thank you, Michael. Clarity.
The experience that remains after the experiencer has gone, that is what is ever shining. That is the fundamental experience I am. That is nirvisesha. Nirvisesha means it's very difficult to express in English what exactly nirvisesha means. Visesha means what's special, what is distinctive. But that is the background. That is like the screen in the cinema is nirvisesha. It's just plain. The pictures on it are visesha. Like that, all that ego and everything it experiences is all visesha. But the underlying reality, our own being, I am, is nirvisesha. About that, nothing can be said. We all know I am, but can we describe I am? We cannot. It's our being. It's beyond we cannot express it in words, we cannot express it in thoughts, but we just know I am. And we know I am not only in waking and dream, we know I am even in sleep. Not knowing the words I am, but we know our being, what the words I am refer to. That is the screen on which pictures appear and disappear. Whether the pictures appear or don't appear, the screen ever remains as it is. That screen is our own being, the fundamental awareness I am. And that alone is what will remain when ego is annihilated. And that never needs stabilization.
When one keenly look into oneself, then like the snake and the rope, the snake disappears and what remains is the rope alone.
Yes, yes. That is, as soon as we see that it's a rope, we will see that there never was a snake there in the first place. So it's the seeing of the rope that effaces the appearance of a snake. So when we see ourselves as we actually are, that will efface ego and everything known by ego.
I was like in this whole week during this tensions with the fight that was going on in the borders of India. Every time when something was going on in my mind, when I was hearing your words, like suffering is the price you pay for rising as ego, and again from your words, like how long will you continue with taking yourself to be this body? You suffer. And Michael, like this was keeping on going throughout it. Michael, like again from one of the our of YouTube channel's video, you were explaining manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. In this, you gave a clarity on chitta, which is like people usually think it as a memory, and it is like from the impression again and again the vasanas keep on appearing, but then it is not so. It is like the ego from the will, it is taking on, it is grasping the form. Can you give some more clarity on this, Michael?
Yes, memory is residual impressions of past experiences. That is, perception is the immediate impressions that experiences give us. The memory is the residual impressions. Vasanas are not impressions. Vasanas are inclinations. So to put it very crudely, the impressions are like input into a computer. The data you input into the computer, the keys you press or whatever, that creates the impressions. The vasanas are the software. They're what are driving the whole process. So vasanas are the seeds from which everything arises. The impressions are the effect of what are the effect of that arising. So that is, vasanas and impressions are very, very different. People say vasanas are the impressions of our past experiences. No, they're not. That is, vasanas are what give rise to the experiences. They're the seeds that give rise to the experiences. And vasanas, that is, as Bhagavan said, vasanas rise in countless numbers like ocean waves. So they're constantly rising in our mind, different inclinations. We are choosing from moment to moment which vasanas to allow ourselves to be swayed by. So the more we allow ourselves to be swayed by a certain vasana, the stronger that vasana becomes. The more we don't allow ourselves to be swayed by it, the weaker it becomes. And when one vasana is being strengthened, things associated with that will give rise to fresh vasanas. A very simple example I sometimes give, but there's a million examples. If we're interested in Bhagavan's, supposing we're not born Tamilian, but we're interested in Bhagavan's teaching, because of our interest in Bhagavan's teaching, we may gain an interest to learn Tamil, to know something more about Tamil, in order to understand Bhagavan's teachings more. And that inclination to learn Tamil may start off as a very slight inclination, but then if we start studying Tamil more and more, we may get more and more interested in that. Sometimes it may happen, but we're so interested in learning Tamil, we forget about Bhagavan's teachings and we start to read other Tamil literature, and this is just an example of how one vasana can give birth to another vasana. And sometimes the child vasana will overtake the parent and will get carried away by the child instead of the parent. So it's this is how, so vasanas are the seeds that are giving rise to everything. Vasanas are the cause, the impressions are the effects. So very, very different. So people who, what memory and chittam have in common, memories come from the past, vasanas come from the past. That's all they have in common, but they're very, very different things. So but many chittam is often interpreted by scholars of Vedanta as memory, because they don't have practical experience. They know the ideas, and someone says it's memory and everyone follows and says it's memories. Someone translates vasanas as impression, everyone follows suit. Just like nan, which means I am I, someone translated it as I-I. Now in almost all English books, you find it translated as I-I, which is missing the point. The whole point is, Bhagavan is saying, I am I. I'm nothing other than I. I'm not this or that, I'm only I. So it has a very deep meaning, because someone mistranslated it and all the sheep follow. So it's like that with Vedanta. So many things have been, someone at some point misinterpreted it, and everyone else has followed suit. So that's why Bhagavan has given us a fresh clarity on these things. The chittam and the karana sarira are one and the same thing. They're both, they're just two different names for the totality of all vasanas. And another thing I said in connection with manas, buddhi, chittam, and ahankaram, manas corresponds to manomaya kosha. Buddhi corresponds to vijnanamaya kosha, the intellect. Chittam corresponds to, when I say corresponds to, it's just another name for the vijnanamaya kosha. Sorry, the anandamaya kosha. Ego is not any kosha. Ego is the I that identifies all the five koshas as I am this body. That all the five koshas make up the body, and ego is that which identifies all these as I. And another thing Bhagavan said about this, there's antakarana, the four antakaranas, manas, buddhi, chitta, mana, ahankara, mind, intellect, will, and ego. He said they're not four different things. They're four different functions of the same thing. So essentially it's ego. Ego functions in the form of the will. It functions in the form of the intellect. It functions in the form of mind. It also functions in the form of this gross body. I am doing this, I am doing that, because of its abhimana, because it identifies all these as I.
Michael, this is like the ego is transpersonal. It's beyond the time, space, and causation.
Yes.
And it is like universal, but it identifies, it is not even a kosha.
Yes.
Michael, like, it's vasanas are not inherent to anybody. It is like a wave appearing in the ocean. Like
Sorry, vasanas are not?
Vasanas are not inherent to anybody, right? Like
no,
I
they
don't
are.
have
They
any
are.
vasanas.
Whose vasanas are they? Vasanas are inclinations. It's ego's inclinations.
Ego is like, okay, ego is not me, right? Like, ego
Well,
is telling I'm.
What? No, ego is not anything other than that is the I that is talking. That is ego. The I that is aware of itself as I am Raghu, I am Michael, I am this person, I am that person. That is ego. It is not what we actually are, but it's what we seem to be now. So the I that is aware of itself as I am this person, that is ego.
No, what I meant was inclinations. Okay, I have a specific inclination, and you have a
Yes.
specific inclination, and Shalini could have a different inclination. But this is coming from a feedback loop of some memory, isn't it, Michael? It is
No,
because we
it's not.
repeat.
It's not to do with memory. When this body dies, we're going to forget everything about this life. Sometimes memories may be carried over into a next life. Sometimes, particularly young children, may have certain memories from previous lives. But as a general rule, with the death of the body, all the memories are wiped out. We completely forget about this identity that we had.
Will
But the
this be
vasanas continue, because the vasanas are the seeds that give rise to all this.
no, what I'm saying is I have the experience, okay, whatever I had, I have like, for example, there will be a continuity. Like, for example, if I'm good at writing in this birth, will it continue as an impression, as a
Well,
vasana,
no,
inclination to
that the vasanas are not impressions.
no, sorry,
That is,
inclination.
if you're good at writing in this life, it's because you've got certain inclinations. So very likely in your next life, you may be inclined to become a writer. So the inclination will continue. The skill won't continue, but the inclination, because if it's a very strong inclination, supposing you're in this life, you're a very accomplished musician. You won't start off your next life immediately an accomplished musician, but you may have a very strong inclination to cultivate skill in music. And because your vasanas in that direction are very strong, you very quickly become an accomplished musician. So that is what is called a child prodigy. You're called a child prodigy. At the age of 6, you're able to play the piano perfectly. There are some such children. That's not the skill that is carried on from the previous life. It's the vasanas are carried on, and the vasanas give rise to the skill. The vasanas manifest themselves as that skill with a little bit of, obviously you have to have a bit of training.
The ego itself and ignorance, it is transpersonal, as I said. If it is universal, how can it hop on from one body to another?
The ego is not universal. Ego is not transpersonal. Ego is ego. Ego is what identifies itself as a person. So ego is not the person, but ego cannot rise without identifying itself as a person. Person means the 5 Śrīs combined make up the person, what Bhagavan refers to as body. Uru Panchakosa Uru, the body is a form of 5 Śrīs. That is the person. Ego identifies itself as a person, and ego is not, the universe is a projection of ego. It's not that ego is universal.
It's so confusing, Michael. Like
it's not. It's very simple. Very, very simple. Ego is that which. What experiences everything is ego. So the whole universe is a mental impression of ego. So it is the universe is part is the ego's dream, we can say.
Agadai undagin anithum undagumam. This is clear, but
Yes.
it is okay. The self is there, and there are bodies that's been produced in this world, and it just occupies this, like, it just grasps it. Like, what is this?
That is the grasping of the body. The body is a projection. So when ego, there's not a dream world and a dream body, and we go to that dream body, that dream world, and identify a dream body as I. No, when we begin dreaming, as soon as we begin dreaming, we rise as ego, project a person, take ourselves a body, take ourselves to be that body, and through the five senses of that body, we perceive the world. So the whole dream world is a projection of ego. It has no existence independent of ego. Though Bhagavan says in verse 24 of Uludunapadu, the Jada Udul Nanenadu, the Jada body does not say I. Satchit Udiyadu. In between, one thing rises as one thing I rises as the extent of a body. He's not implying that the body exists there and Satchit exists there, and in between, that's a way of expressing it. What it means is the only connection between Satchit and this appearance of a body and world is ego, because it's only in the view of ego that body and world exist. And it rises in between in the sense that it takes certain qualities it takes from Satchit. That is, ego borrows its being and its awareness from Satchit, but it borrows its form from a body. So it's neither entirely Satchit nor entirely body. It's a conflation of the two.
Mm-hmm. That is, ego is the jiva, isn't it, Michael?
Ego is jiva. Yeah, Bhagavan says that clearly in verse 24. Know that this I rises as the extent of a body. This is, how do you say it? Chitjadagranti, Jivan, Chitjadagranti, Bandham, Jivan, Nupame, Hande, Ichamsaram, and mind. So these are all different names for that one I that rises as I am this body.
One follow-up from Raghu's question.
Yes.
How do you then explain, many persons, but one ego? That's where it's very confusing. Like, we know that inclinations
that is,
are... Yeah.
In a dream, there's one dreamer. That one dreamer experiences itself as one body in the dream. It sees so many other bodies that appear to be just like it. So if in the view of the dreamer takes itself to be a person in the dream. It sees many other people. It seems to the dreamer, but all those other people are seeing the same world. If you ask anyone in a dream, do you see this world? Or do you see this table or this chair or something? They'll say, yes, of course I see it, just like you do. So long as we're dreaming, there seem to be many seers of the dream. But when we wake up, we recognize all those other seers existed only in the view of ourself, the one seer, the dreamer. Likewise, so long as we look outwards, we as ego identify ourselves as a person. We see many other people just like us. All those other people seem to be ego, because ego takes itself to be a person. It takes every person to be an ego. So it seems to us there are many people experiencing this world. So long as we're looking outwards, in effect, there is nana jiva. There's a variety of jivas, many jivas. The reason Bhagavan taught Ekajiva Vada is not to try and to confuse ourselves when we look outwards and see many. Yes, Bhagavan behaved as if there are many jivas, didn't he? He was kind to each and every one who came. So outwardly we have to behave in this world. This world is just an appearance. We who seem to be a part of this world are also part of the appearance. All the other people are also part of the appearance. So we have to act in this world according to the appearance, because our acting is itself a part of the appearance. Why Bhagavan taught Ekajiva Vada is all this, the whole world and all the multiplicity of jivas we see in it, all exist in whose view? In my view. So who am I? The one I in whose view all these many other eyes seem to exist. So Ekajiva Vada, to apply Ekajiva Vada in practice, we have to turn within. When we look outwards, we have to act as if there are a multiplicity of jivas. That's why I sometimes say, when people get when people generally don't like solipsism. Solipsism means the idea that there's only one. So what Bhagavan teaches us is not social solipsism. We shouldn't think that, oh, I'm the only one, and so I don't have to care about others. So long as we take ourselves to be a person, all the other people seem to be jivas just like us, we should behave accordingly. What Bhagavan is teaching us, Ekajiva Vada, is not social solipsism, it is metaphysical solipsism. It's going deeper to see all this world with all the millions of jivas in it. Not only in this small little planet of ours, there is more than 7 billion human beings. There are many other animals. There are elephants and cows and horses and dogs and cats and frogs and mice and flies and butterflies, all sorts of multiple. They all seem to be sentient, just like us. So there seem to be a multiplicity. There are billions of jivas in this world, so long as we look outwards. But all these billions of jivas exist in whose view? There's one I who is aware of all these billions of jivas. So who is this one I? Who am I? We need to turn back within to investigate who is the I in whose view these multiplicity of I's appear to exist.
I have one question, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah. If this whole world is an illusion, as what Bhagavan says, then
Yes.
is Arunachala also is an illusion?
The form of Arunachala is an illusion. The form of Bhagavan is an illusion. But though they are illusions, what is shining through them is the reality. That is, Bhagavan gave the example of the lion that appears in the elephant's dream. The lion is unreal, but it brings about the real, about the waking, which is real. So the name and form of Guru is unreal. But it brings about the real awakening, because what is shining through that name and form, that is our own self, our own being, has appeared outwardly in the form of Bhagavan to tell us to turn back within, to find him in our own heart.
Because I remember reading that even, I mean, he was a realized soul and he had tears just looking at the mountain.
Yes.
And which, because it was so real for him.
That is, so long as we are the body, Arunachala is, so long as we are real as this body, as we seem to be, Arunachala is real as that hill. As Bhagavan says in Arunachala Ashtakam, when I look upon you as having form, you appear as a hill on earth. But what Arunachala actually is our own being, that fundamental awareness I am. That is the true form of Arunachala. But because we're looking outwards, Arunachala has graciously appeared in the form of a hill and in the form of Bhagavan. But forms are not real, but what lies behind these forms is the reality. That's why Bhagavan explained very nicely in verse 10 of Arunachala Padigam. But if you think of Arunachala once, it will subdue the cheshte, the mischievous activity of the mind. It will draw the mind to face towards itself. That implies towards itself for one. But itself for one means they can't. If it is one, there can't be. It's not a matter of one seeing another. So when he says draws to Tanadu Abhimukamaha, Oru Tanudu Abhimukamaha, he implies we ourselves facing ourselves. Because that is the reality of Arunachala. By facing ourselves, he makes us achalam tambo, motionless like himself. And thereby he feeds upon us.
But it's a good start.
Oh, it's a good start. Yes, yes, yes. We have to start from some. If you want to run a race, there's only one place you can start from.
Yes.
Where you are. So we start this journey where we are. We're now firmly rooted in this form. So we need God and Guru in form to lead us beyond form.
Even all these poems and all this, his songs and all that is a good start because it just sort of instills in us the bhakti.
Yes, yes, yes. And if we read Arunachala Stuti Panchakam carefully, we can see very, very clearly Bhagavan is addressing the outward form of the hill. But he's repeatedly saying it shines in the heart. So he's constantly reminding us that what appears outwardly in that form is what is actually always shining in the heart.
Actually, this part is for a really highly intellectual and such a
not intellectual. Part. We don't have to be intellectual. We have to have a certain.
It's not like the bhakti path. It's so simple.
This is for bhakti path. This is the cream of the bhakti path. This is where the bhakti path is leading. This is the very pinnacle of the path of bhakti. And it doesn't require a great intellect. What Bhagavan has taught us is extremely simple. What the bhaktas who are much attached to nama rupa upasana, their metaphysics is far more complicated. If you listen to how they explain the Bhagavad Gita or things that are very, very simple from Bhagavan's perspective, they make so complicated. Rather than accepting that Bhagavan, Paramatma and Brahman are all different names for the same thing, they give some elaborate explanation. But Bhagavan is like the sun. The brightness of the sun is like Paramatma. That is, Paramatma is like the brightness of the sun, and the effulgence of that brightness is Brahman. Unnecessarily they complicate things. It's all one.
Well, we say
My God is special. That is, Krishna is the supreme personality of a Godhead. All the other gods are demigods. That is how you make all these unnecessary differences. Why not see that the same Krishna is what appears in the name of all the other gods? Then there's no difficulty. You don't have to say this is supreme and these are all inferior. They're all one. If you are devoted to Krishna, then it's Krishna who appeared in the form of Bhagavan Ramana. It's Krishna who appears in the form of Arunachala.
yes.
So Bhagavan keeps it so simple. He makes it as simple as it can be. To understand Bhagavan, you don't have to be a great intellectual. You have to be a simple child. I think Jesus said, or somewhere in the Gospels it is said, unless you become like little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of God. I don't know what they mean by that, but what I take that to mean, we have to be childlike in our understanding. We have to take things as it said. When Bhagavan says, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. He means just what he says. What simpler explanation can there be for all of this than to say it's all a dream? Then we don't need an elaborate explanation about there's Ishwara mixed with Maya. I mean, sorry, Brahma mixed with Maya becomes Ishwara, and Ishwara creates what's it called? I've forgotten the word for it. Hiranyagarbha. And from Hiranyagarbha comes ego, and from ego comes something else. And why, as Bhagavan said, when all these are to be rejected, we don't have to analyze the hair in the barber shop. It's all to be swept up and rejected. So don't worry about all these tattvas, about Hiranyagarbha and this and that and all these things. Keep it very simple. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Simple explanation, because everything exists in whose view? Only in the view of ego. So it's very simple, logical, can be understood only by a child. If you're a great intellect, if you're a brilliant philosopher or scientist or mathematician or something, you won't be able to understand this because this is too simple. Only those of very simple heart can understand what Bhagavan is talking about.
And also, I think
There's no teaching, no philosophy simpler than Bhagavan's. It is so simple.
Can I ask one more question, which has always bothered me? When we first wake up in the morning, the very first instant, the split second, we start to think thoughts.
Yes.
But if we regress and say, no, I'm not going to think and go, we are not able to wake up. We will feel sleepy again.
Yes.
Only when you think of something, like I have to get up, I've got this, I've got that to do, can you get up and go to the, go brush your teeth and all this, all those activities. But if you don't and say, no, I'm not going to think, I'm just going to be nothing, then you feel drawn back.
To explain this in terms of Bhagavan's teachings, waking up in the morning is rising as ego. As soon as we rise as ego, we project this body and world. As soon as we project the body and world, there's so many things to think about. Then all my debts I have to worry about, all my the problems in office I have to think about, the problems in family,
the world springs up
the sick relatives, so many things that billion and one things for me to think about.
It's so.
But if at the moment of rising we hold on to our being,
a trillion thoughts in a day, I'm sure. A trillion thoughts in a day.
Yes. We must be thinking a trillion thoughts, exactly.
Every grain of sand on the earth is our thoughts.
Yeah.
But
we take all this on ourselves simply by
doing? I'm only thinking and thinking and thinking.
About what? About things other than ourselves.
Yes.
We're thinking about this body, about this. All these are anya. We never think of who am I who is thinking about all this.
Yes. And it never occurred to me anyway that is what it keeps us going.
that is, as Bhagavan says, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikum, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongam, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. So thoughts, attention to things other than ourselves, is the very food on which we as ego live. So we couldn't live for a moment without constantly attending to things other than ourselves.
Even before you open your eyes.
Yes, yes. The eyes are themselves a thought. They're part of a projection.
Oh, wow. This is something new.
Yes. You have to have a body before you can open your eyes. So the body you've already projected, the projection has already started.
At the same time, when we go to sleep, we can feel that we are not conscious of our body. We're not feeling the clothes or the duvet or whatever.
Well, when we fall asleep, we are so tired, we just withdraw our attention from everything else and thereby subside back within. But though we withdraw our attention from everything else, we don't fix our attention on ourselves. That is why ego is not destroyed. So ego goes then into laya, and it rises again the next morning.
Laya is not too difficult. Manonasha can be, it's an impossibility.
Manonasa is very, very easy if we have love for it. Bhagavan said, Ayayati sulapam, Atma-vichara ayayati sulapam. Atma-vichara is nothing but manonasa. The knowledge of that is the knowing ourself is the destruction of mind.
This is what I told. We don't love ourselves genuinely enough. I mean, if there is really
we love something other than ourselves as ourselves. We love this body as ourselves. We love this person as ourselves.
It's distinctively different from body and mind.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. What we all love ourselves, but we misplace that love by mistaking ourselves to be something other than what we actually are. Among all the billions of people in this world, who is the one person I love the most? Who is the one person I care about the most?
Myself.
This person I take, not myself, this person I take myself to be. So all Bhagavan asks us to do is to switch our love from this person we seem to be back to ourselves as we actually are. Back to our being. We should love just being as we are.
Bhagavan is just so amazing. I cry when I think of him.
Exactly.
I mean, I've been in other parts, other gurus, and Vedanta for many years. But Bhagavan is like a super genius.
Bhagavan is Dakshinamurti himself. He's Adi Guru Dakshinamurti. So Bhagavan cannot be compared to other gurus.
Cannot be compared.
Because other gurus, they're all part of a parampara.
A lineage.
Yeah. Why there is no Guru Parampara? Why Bhagavan has no Guru Parampara?
He is.
Because he said God and Guru are the Kadavulam Guruvum Unmayal Verala. At the beginning of the 12th paragraph of Nana, God and Guru are in truth not different. Do we need a parampara of God? No, God is eternal, so no parampara. Guru is eternal. So Bhagavan is not just a guru in the ordinary sense of the word. Bhagavan is the eternal guru.
He's so compassionate. Oh my God. Just thinking of him just brings tears.
He is Ambu Swarupam. He's the very embodiment of love.
He could have kept that knowledge all to himself and gone into the woods or jungle and not told anything.
Because there is no person there.
That knowledge is himself.
Mm.
And he doesn't see us as any different. So he's just sharing with, but by sharing with us, he's sharing with himself.
Mm. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
I have, Michael, like, you know, I have when I used to do this is like exact analogy that you gave. This is like a hurt tiger. I mean, it's wounded tiger. It fiercely comes back again. I've did much of this exercise, Michael, but then this ego is like so strong that it rises back again, and it stands, as you say. I've tried to be very, you know, as tears come from Vasanta ma'am, the same way it had happened, but then the ego is fooling us. It's just rises up again, Michael. It's acting as an hero, it's acting as a comedian, it's acting itself as a victim card, and it's again coming back in, and it's so difficult to destroy, Michael. And it's also talking like this.
This ego is so powerful, you're saying. From where does ego derive its power?
From the self.
Yes. So which is more powerful?
But it's not allowing to go inside. It's not the love is not coming to
that
get
is
surrender into.
Ego derives its power from our real nature, which is grace. But we get the power from grace, but we misuse that power to go outwards. If we want to be saved, we can be saved only by grace. So we have to yield ourselves to that grace. Instead of misusing the grace to go out, the power that has been bestowed upon us by grace, instead of using that power to go outwards, we should use that power to surrender ourselves to grace. Then grace will do everything. We cannot destroy ego. Grace alone can destroy ego. What we can do is surrender ourselves to grace by holding on to our being, which is grace itself.
Michael, it's now.
We are not here to destroy ego. We are here to be as we are. Hold on to our being, and ego will take care of itself. Tedinalotum piticum, it will run away. Yes, sorry, Shalini.
No, I was just saying that it's 5 o'clock now, so
yes.
Been going for almost 3 hours, just under
right.
3
Okay.
hours.
Okay. Yes.
So,
True.
I think it's it's a bit tiring for you as well. I think,
Yeah.
because I think
Thank
that
you so much.
sort of next time the remaining questions could be asked, and it's a long day for Michael as well.
Yeah.
And so we can close with the mantra.
Yes.
Thank you.
Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya.